Live from the Ballz Visual Radio Studios, this is the Blades on Ballz show. And now, here's your host, the voice of South African rugby himself, Hugh Bladen. Hugh, it's over to you.
Darren's arrived, thank goodness, because Sid said he would try and come in. Sid has got a day job. And so Sid said he would try and come in at about 11 o'clock because he was away the whole of last week. And so he'll try and come in maybe at about 11 and have a chat to us. What a weekend, it was. Darren is now on earphones and on air. Hi, Darren.
Hi, Blades.
Hi, Boykie.
Nice to be able to push your buttons in the right way.
Well, it's nice to be able to sit down with a doyen of radio work.
No, he's not here, but I'm happy to step in.
And really nice. The Vodacom Cup final on Friday night, for those of you who missed it, was a cracking game. Absolutely fantastic game. Both sides threw the ball around. The first half was sort of a bit loose and lots of tries scored. In the second half, where it became a bit tighter, it was almost a game of two halves. And the second half became a bit tighter with the Lions controlling. I think the Lions had what was interesting is that the Lions had a better all-round game. You know, there were 8 or 9 guys who have played Super Rugby before, but I mean very inexperienced at Super Rugby level, apart from Dion van Rensburg, who has played about 40-odd Super Rugby matches. But apart from that, you know, 1 or 2 games here. Warren Whiteley's played a few. Michael Bondisio's played a few, but on the whole, not a lot of Super Rugby experience. So they did very well, and well done to Jimmy Stonehouse and his team. They really seem to have built a spirit up in Nelspruit. And my hat off to both of them. What a fantastic game.
Do you think Jimmy Stonehouse should be getting higher honours now?
You know, they've picked a side to go to Georgia.
Who?
Not Georgia in the USA.
Georgia,
just below Russia.
Where all the names end in A-D-Z-E.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chechelashvili.
Yeah, them.
I did Georgia against Samoa.
My sympathies.
The day when Tani Thakibao was running against Tani Thakibao was his name. He was running against Chechelashvili. What an experience that was. Thank goodness I got hold of Chris Tau, who is a Romanian and was with the world, the IRB. You know, when Louis Late took over as president of South African Rugby, the 2 front runners were Malele George and Henny Erasmus from the Pumas, and they were briefed on what their responsibilities would be if they became president of South African Rugby, and they immediately withdrew because they thought that the IRB was the B-side of the IRA. Sorry.
A long way to get to that punchline, Blade.
Yeah, so Sydney won't be in. And then, of course, I was in Pretoria for the Bulls game. I think I might have told you guys out there, and gals, that there's a mate of mine at the gym who would bet on a fly flying off the wall. Got the Bulls about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Got the Bulls. He took the Bulls 800 to 10,000.
Wow.
I reckon it's a good bet, hey?
When was that? Just after they'd gone through that away trip?
Yeah, just around about then. When they were looking sort of a little bit iffy, and Morné Steyn wasn't playing. Morné Steyn, I take my hat off to Morné Steyn. Everybody writes him off and says, he's not the best fly half in South Africa. And as soon as that happens, back he bounces. And, he's playing great rugby.
And do you think the announcement, the final revelation that he was going overseas was kind of a sort of a millstone off his neck? Because we know he's going overseas, so he's really got nothing more to lose, so he's relaxed a bit more.
You're probably right, Darren. Yeah. I heard you having a long chat to Joel.
Yes.
On the radio, you were on Friday morning.
Yeah. Friday afternoon. In fact,
Friday afternoon. Yeah.
Something that maybe we can look at, especially now that we're at this stage. and particularly with South African rugby and the fact that our teams like the Sharks and Stormers, who I think a lot of people, and you might have as well, thought would be the two leading lights this year, have basically failed in their attempt to get to the playoffs. Had an interesting chat with Francois Pienaar as well, and Joel echoed this as well, and I chatted to somebody else. I think Dan Retief also kind of touched on it. They all seem to be singing the same song, and this whole thing about every union having the same power in South Africa and what should be done. And maybe if you're okay, we can. I don't know if you heard that Francois Pienaar interview.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Maybe if Will can find it, the interview we did with Francois Pienaar a couple of weeks ago. Maybe we can play that out and you can get some context.
Yeah.
I'd be keen to find out your thoughts on maybe the right road to go for our rugby in this country.
Yeah.
Might be a good opportunity to chat about that today, but we can play the interview again.
Okay, it is interesting because, there's going to be controversy again. Because the Southern Kings have been drawing these fantastic crowds, and if the Lions win, let's say the Lions win the playoffs, I think that the guys down in Eastern Province will have a rightful case in saying, hey, come on guys, look at the crowds we've been pulling, look at the performance of our team, they've done much better than everybody expected, and so back they come. And you're looking at having a union like the Lions. What are you going to do? Say to the Lions, sorry guys, you're out of here. Joburg, out of here.
You think there might not be a chance that will happen?
No, Darren, there could be, but I mean, it would be, from a Lions point of view, it would be catastrophic. And it's a province that's, okay, I know Eastern Province has been going for years and years and years too. It was quite interesting that Dr. Donnie Craven developed a whole lot of provinces. And I can tell you that in my view, quite a few of them was for him to stay in power. Because he would sort of say, to Northern Free State, okay, guys, you go to the powerhouse in Northern Free State and say to him, look, I think it's about time you guys had your own union. You be the president, the whole thing, but just remember, vote for me. So that was how, in many ways, he stayed in power. I mean, Yanni LaRue did that as well.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
We do have a cough button. We do have a cough button. Try again.
Oh, sorry. Where's the cough button?
There it is. Go.
Oh, just wait. Jimmy Stonehouse. We were saying Jimmy Stonehouse. He coached the southern and northern SA Barbarian sides that played against England, and they've just picked a side out of the minor provinces to go to Georgia. And Jimmy Stonehouse is the coach.
So you think they might be watching him?
Yeah, I'm not sure that they're watching him in terms of honours like Springbok coach or things like that. But he's
no. I'm thinking maybe is he ready to sort of maybe start looking at stepping up into a Super Rugby franchise, for instance?
He may be. Heinmens, who's the father of MJ and Heno. Is the president of the Pumas, of Mpumalanga Rugby Union. And they're quite ambitious, and since they've moved to Nelspruit, they seem to have gelled. I mean, when they were in Imalahleni, Witbank, most of the guys played for them, lived in Pretoria, and so there was this continual to and fro. Now they all live in Nelspruit, and they're getting better. They're getting better practice times, and all that sort of thing.
And a better stadium.
In a better stadium.
In a very fast-growing city as well, who don't have really anything to latch onto.
I was in the jewelry business and used to go to the Kruger Park about once every 6 weeks. We did a lot of business with the Kruger Park. And I haven't been to the Kruger Park. I've been in that area, but I haven't been up to Kruger Park for about 14, 15 years. Incredible, the building and how it's expanded. And that road between Nelspruit and White River, I mean, it's just totally built up now, whereas before, there was a bit of bush around. We saw, what did we see? I've forgotten the name of the damn thing.
An animal?
An animal.
How many syllables?
We know how many syllables. It's one of those prehistoric-looking things.
Wow. Crocodile?
armadillo.
Armadillo.
An armadillo.
Yeah, well, what do they call them here? An aardvark.
Aardvark.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
During the day?
During the day,
That's
walking
rare.
along the side of the road.
That's
It was
rare.
about that long. And, oh, shite. Sorry.
Is that Sid? Do you want to take a tune
No,
and
it's
answer?
not Sid. I'm sorry.
Do you need to take the call?
Yeah, let's take a
tune.
tune. Take a
BLADEZ is
tune.
going to take
Sorry
a call.
about that. Very unprofessional.
Not at all.
I don't normally... Chicks. Well, not chicks. Had my grandson for lunch yesterday. Well, my grandsons. But my 11-year-old went to Justin Bieber. And he fiddles around with my phone, and the next thing is Justin Bieber saying, baby, 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 oh.
That's your ringtone now.
They said it was pretty good. No, it's not my ringtone.
Okay,
No,
thank
no.
goodness.
But, I mean, I say he just fiddled around. Question today. My question today is, who scored South Africa in a test match? Who scored the first 5-point try?
And who scored the last 4-point try?
I know who scored the last 3-point and the first 4-point.
Who scored the last 4-point try?
I think it was Michael du Plessis.
The last 4-point try.
Yeah.
What was the try in the Lions 74 Lions series?
Aha. Well, you see, that's very clever because Peter Cranier scored the last 3-point try and the first 4-point try. And I've got a funny feeling he scored the last 3-point try and the first 4-point try. I've got a strand. I can actually look this up.
Oh, don't you know?
What?
The last...
No, I know who scored the first 5-point try.
The last 4-point try?
I thought it was Michael du Plessis, but I've got
Donnie Gerber?
I've got my 1989 book here.
Oh, so it'll be in there.
And in fact, I've got the Springbok Rugby Records. This is a fabulous book. One of the great problems with this book is that a year later it's out of date, But I've marked where we played our last
4-point test.
No. We played in 1989. We played against a World 15 at Newlands and then at Ellis Park. Quite interesting. I've got that team. I've got that game. I did that game. South Africa against FMB International 15. In the first test, we won 20 points to 19. In the second test, the Springbok pack got pushed backwards by this, what they felt was a bit of a makeshift pack. Greg Martin was the fullback. You know, Marto's actually a nice guy. I know that some people get a bit annoyed with the Australians. And Clarkie's a hell of a nice guy. And they're all great guys. And Marto was the fullback in that side. Johan Hughes, Karel du Plessis, Michael du Plessis, Fafa Knutzer.
Wow.
Kobus Burger, Nas Botha, Garth Wright. Heinrich Rogers, Uri Schmidt, Francie Rasmus. Francie Rasmus was the guy who was captain of EP. I'm sure I told the listeners, viewers, this last week when Sid was here, because I was with Donnie Gerber at a couple of Mana Aanda. You know those Mana Aanda?
Yep.
This Mana Aand was 40 k's north of Brits. The only time anybody spoke English was when somebody addressed Carlos Spencer. They were even talking to me in Afrikaans. We've got, please, BLADEZ and Darren, tell us with Bismarck and Butch maybe playing this weekend, what's the odds of beating the Bulls?
From Duncan.
From Duncan Betteridge. Duncan, the Darren Scott listening to you talk rugby makes my Monday. Ah, you're a good boy. Darren's with me because Simon's gallivanting somewhere and Sydney can't be here, and it's great to say that Darren is with me. Now I can tell you.
Sharks World said Donnie Gerber as well.
Who did?
Sharks World.
Sharks World.
Yeah.
No, Donnie Gerber didn't even play 1989. And and we didn't play a test. Now this is proven in this book of South African rugby games. They give you the team and the opposition of every test South Africa played.
Mm-hmm.
And we played in 1989, we played the World 15, and I did that game. That was at Ellis Park.
And that was the team that played that day, the one you just read out.
22-16. Aha, I was right. It was Michael du Plessis.
Was it Michael du Plessis? There we go.
Yeah, and I didn't look that up this morning. I want to know who scored South Africa's first 5-point try.
Maybe Sharks World's answering.
You're not allowed to guess.
No, it's Sharks World's guessing Dani Gerber, question mark.
I like that. Sharks World, you're quite right. Dani Gerber, 1992, also at Ellis Park.
Against
the All Blacks.
All Blacks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I marked that game because I did that game as well.
While you're remembering stuff, BLADEZ, what's significant about today in rugby terms? This day.
Oh, it's the 20th of May.
Yes.
Did we start the World Cup? I know the World Cup was in June.
Mm-hmm.
20th of May.
20th of May. Somebody just mentioned something on, I think it was on my Twitter feed, so you can't see it.
I just mentioned something on your Twitter.
No, somebody just tweeted on my Twitter feed, which you can't see there.
Oh.
A little stat about what's significant about today.
I don't know.
Well, should we leave it and let the folks, let's see if
like
the folks want to guess?
Scientist. When the naked scientist doesn't know, he says, I don't know. That's why I like it. But Mornay, if it's Nas Buerta, I'm quitting rugby.
Let me just see here if...
Sharks World has got it on the button.
Yeah. I'm just, at the moment, sifting through a whole lot. I've been having a full go at Tottenham fans this morning, so forgive me. I've got to go through a whole lot of...
Did they miss out?
Yes, again, shame.
This is a shame. When Danny Blanchflower was there years and years ago, I was sort of sympathetic towards Tottenham. But I told you, when I was a little boy, long years ago, 20 maybe, I used to get the Eagle Sports Annual. And the one sports annual, a lot of it was about the Man United side being wiped out in the air crash. And so I always sort of have had a sympathy for Man United. But, you know, I talk to the guys, some of the guys in the gym, one guy, because his mother was born in West Ham, supports West Ham, and he talks about we.
Yeah.
You know, and so the Chelsea supporters said, we did this and we won the European Cup last year. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's...
do you do that?
Oh, you should have seen me yesterday. I was actually over at David O'Sullivan's house. His little boy turned 9. But at 5 o'clock, I was in front of that TV. David
played, forgive my ignorance.
Arsenal played Newcastle, but at the same time, Spurs played Sunderland. And it was another one of those last day things.
Arsenal beat Newcastle
1-0, but they were 1-0 up, which would have kept them safe while Spurs were tying. Spurs should have got 3 penalties. They didn't get them. And then they scored, I think, with about 10 minutes to go. So if Arsenal had then conceded and Spurs had won, it would have gone down to... Arsenal would have still made it. But with Spurs winning, if Arsenal had lost that game and Spurs won, they would have finished in Champions League. So it was a very hairy last 10 minutes.
Sure.
And you feel like you're actually part of the team. And you know about the dislike Arsenal have for Spurs fans and vice versa.
Because they're neighbours, aren't they?
Yeah, it's North
and
London rivals.
The one are sort of working class and the other are clever Jewish business people.
Well, I don't know if it's that anymore.
Well, I read the autobiography of Alan Sugar. Have you read it?
No, I haven't.
I mean, Alan Sugar lived in the East End of London, and I mean, they were a really poor family, and built up and started just sort of selling radios part-time, and at one stage, I mean, he was worth about £95 million when his company went public. And of course, Alan Sugar bought Spurs.
Spurs, yeah. No longer, I think he might still
have
a small
No,
share.
he said that was the worst thing he ever did.
You know what probably the worst thing in the eyes of Spurs fans that he did yesterday, because he was obviously at the ground watching.
Yeah.
But there was no cell phone connectivity. So somewhere somebody had obviously given him the heads up and said that Newcastle had equalised against Arsenal. So so he thought that that's what had happened. So eventually when he could get back onto thing, he tweeted, Newcastle equalise. And of course what happens is everybody's on their phones in the crowd now looking to see what's happening in the other game. He's got like 3 million followers, so people are sort of filtering around the stadium that Newcastle had equalised. They all started cheering and going mad.
And they hadn't.
It hadn't, no. So Alan Sugar had stuck his own fans away.
Oh, no.
And there's some great photographs of these guys celebrating and stuff, and they've blamed Alan Sugar for that, sticking his own team away.
Okay, look at that. It was Gerber scored the first try against the All Blacks in 92.
Yeah.
I can tell you what minute it was. But I'm going to, try Gerber, 18th minute of the second half. They were 10-0 down at half-time. And the 18th minute of the second half, after Nasser kicked a penalty, and Sir John Kerwin had scored a try. After 20 minutes in the second half, now this is our return to World Rugby. What a day it was. What a day. 27-8 we were down, looking like we were getting a thumping, and then suddenly Darnie scored, Peter Miller scored, Darnie scored another try, Nas converted them all, and we lost the game 27-24. Sash has arrived. Hi, Sash.
Hello, Sash. Yeah, Sharks were saying it was Gerber scored first try against the I think he's having a debate with somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Angela Castagno, Darnie Gerber.
Yeah.
Spot on. Probably wrong, but it's Jimmy White's birthday. My goodness me, Jimmy White played 10 tests, scoring 1 try debut versus Wales in 1931. Jeremy James. I met Jimmy White a couple of times, and I knew his son.
Gee.
Yeah.
I thought the only Jimmy White I know
Killer
played
White.
snooker.
Yeah.
I'm giving my age
I
away.
didn't have a misspent youth. Jimmy White, Killer White, they call it, because he was a crash tackler of note. But that's not your reason, is it?
No, I think that's in answer to my question. What's significant about today?
Yes.
In rugby from a South African point of view.
Yeah.
It's
Jimmy White's birthday.
No, that's not it though. Well, look, it is.
Probably wrong, but it's Jimmy White's birthday. Sorry, Jeremy James.
That's not what I was referring to.
No, I'm sure you weren't.
Sheldon has actually sent me the tweet, Sheldon Wiggle, on my Twitter feed, saying that today in history was a significant... he's picked out a specific moment, but I think it was just one of that moment in the game was one of the key moments in what was a very significant day as well. Should we leave it?
20th of May.
Yeah.
It couldn't be World Cup, because we didn't play World Cup on the 20th of May unless it was the day the World Cup started and we played Australia, and the crowd started chanting
Mandela.
Yeah.
Madiba.
Nelson.
Nelson.
Wow, I was there. I wasn't commentating the game. I didn't commentate any of the 95 World Cup because I'd gone to Mnet. And
I was there in the crowd, and you know who else was sitting there? It was actually one of the sort of pictures from the day that was taken in the crowd. You know, everyone had their face painted with the South African flag, and there's this picture of some of the fans sitting there celebrating, and this little face sticking out behind with the flag. Guess who it was?
No.
As a youngster, Bob Skinstad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, sitting in the crowd.
Amazing.
Supporting that day as well.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Blades. It was today, the anniversary, 18 years ago.
That we
Yeah.
was sitting at New... Louis Late flew us down to the whole Transvaal executive. I was then on the Uitvoerende Komitee. And he flew us down because he had a suite at Newlands. And we sat in his suite, and it was very significant. Then the guy who runs Canon married the girl who choreographed the whole thing.
Wow.
Oh, what is her name? They lived down in Asna. He sponsored the Sharks. Canon.
Not Denton.
No. Canon, you know, the
Photocopiers,
copiers and that sort of thing. Oh, how
The only guy I remember that used to be with him is Dave McLeod, who does all the stadium announcements.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But I don't know who the...
No, if somebody knows who that guy is, he sponsored the Sharks, and he married, it's on the tip of my tongue. She choreographed the whole opening and
Really?
closing ceremony.
Wow.
Which they were brilliant. You remember?
It was brilliant.
Do you remember
Absolutely
how
brilliant
they were?
It was one of those that actually I think was one of the, not from a rugby point of view if it was the first one, but it was one of those, if you're in the stadium, the whole story was about Madiba getting there and Madiba being there, and that kind of lifted the whole crowd. Yeah. All of the rest of it, though, was very much made for TV, because you remember, if you watched on TV, a lot of it was that sort of overhanging helicopter shot that you got the outline of Africa and all the stuff. Whereas if you're sitting in the stands, it was a little out of context for you because you couldn't really see what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know, you could see all these people running around the field, great vibe, but you didn't get the full picture because you couldn't see that high shot.
Yeah.
But it was very, very well done.
Yeah.
It was just a fabulous day.
Yeah. It was. What a day. What a day. I also, I must say, in 1992, and we 27-24 against the All Blacks. And then the following week, I went down to Cape Town. I didn't do the game, but we got smashed by Australia back in 1992. In fact, I'll look up the score. Terry McClintock is the cannon guy.
Terry McClintock.
Terry McClintock.
Yeah.
Married the lady who, she was a fabulous girl. Gary Late, I thought, where have you been?
The regular, is he?
He's a regular. Gary's fabulous. Thanks for listening, watching. Great to... Oh, wow. We don't think about ourselves as sort of like that, do we, Darren? We're
No,
just sort of
definitely
ordinary
not.
oaks.
We're just lucky guys to get to do what we love doing.
Somebody said to me, you've got Boyzone's job. And I said, yeah, if they paid enough, it would be Boyzone's job. You don't give up your day job. But it has been. I mean, it's been incredible. What was I going to look up? Bob Skinstad? No. Bob Skinstad. Isn't it funny? I did a game with him the other day, 2 weeks ago, when the Bulls smashed the Hurricanes. Mm. And Bob had just been down to a Legends Golf Day down in Balgowan. At something Sparrowbush.
Oh, no, it's Boschhoek.
Boschhoek, quite right. And he said, we were in the bus, and there was Donnie Gerber and Ray Mort and Rob Lowe, and he said it was just they're in the bus going back to the airport. He said it was the most wonderful hour he had spent in years, because those guys are all his boyhood heroes. Yeah. And, you know, there's Bob Skinstad, who's captained South Africa and played 50-odd test matches, saying, you know, it was so wonderful to be in the company of these guys legends who are my heroes. Yeah, he's a very humble guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to take a tune, and then we've also got Francois Pienaar loaded up to go.
Francois loaded up to go. Fabulous.
All right. I'm trying to anticipate what kind of music you would play.
I got shouted at.
Why?
Because we were asking for Whitney Houston and Barbara. Sydney loves Barbara Streisand.
And
Barbara
who shouted
Streisand,
at you?
she dated Andre Agassi. Andre Agassi's book, you should try and read that book, that autobiography. Andre Agassi actually says in the book he hated tennis because his dad, who was an Iranian boxer, built this machine that he called the Dragon that used to just hit 1,000 balls at him a day from over the net. And the father, I believe that the father, when he was in his crib, strapped a table tennis bat to his hand. I mean, no, this is Dinkum.
Brilliant.
Strapped a table tennis bat to his hand, hung a tennis ball from the roof, and when he was still in his crib, and he said he hated tennis.
Agassi.
Amazing. Yeah.
There we go. There's a legacy of stories about very pushy parents in sport. I mean, I think Mary Pierce's dad was the same.
Oh, really?
And I mean, there's you'd probably know one or two as well. There's a couple of rugby and sports
shall
people.
Be nameless. I mean, the word certainly.
Who have moved provinces to get away from the...
Sydney didn't have a pushy parents at all. But he had an uncle, Uncle Dave, who used to come to every practice, every Transvaal practice, not the Wanderers practices, every time Transvaal practice, when we practiced both at Springfield and at Ellis Park, Uncle Dave would arrive with a first aid kit. was so funny.
All right, well, let's
let's get on with some.
tell the folks to tweet us.
And we got sidetracked a little bit because we were deciding what music we were going to like.
Well, you got shouted at for playing Barbra Streisand.
Yeah,
Who shouted?
no, Simon said that
No,
they
but
got tweets about
he didn't.
Twitters.
No, he didn't. Did he get tweets about? Did he? For playing Barbra Streisand? Really? Tough. And I'll tell you what,
Theobald Nell is right too.
Yeah, there we go. I'll tell you what, I've got some carpenters for you afterwards
Oh,
as
wow,
well.
yeah.
There we go. This is your show, Blade. You
Mamas
play
and
what
the
you
Poppers.
want.
I like the Mamas and
I'll
the
find you
Poppers
some of
too.
that too as well.
Guys are tweeting.
Let me get you back on your other Twitter feed. Sorry. I'm on the
Simon,
wrong one, yeah.
we need to get back on that.
Yeah. There we go.
Somebody sent us the program. Sharks World
Yeah.
sent us the program of that game. Now, I've looked it up because I've got my 1993 book here, and I did quite a few of those All Black games, and there's the game. 43-25. You're quite right. Somebody who tweeted that. Was that?
Gary via Sharks World. I think Sharks World, yeah, the program. The Natal New Zealand program.
Yeah.
I'll open it for you. There it is. That's Gary.
That's
Sharks,
Gary.
Sharks World. Sharks World.
Sharks World.
Yeah.
Okay, and I've got that. I did that game. Shall we go through the Sharks team? Hugh Reese Edwards, Van der Westhuizen, Dickie Muir, Peter Muller, Tony Watson, Henry Hannibal, Robert de Preer, Gerard Harding. Gerard says, my name's Gerard, because people lose their false teeth when they pronounce Gerard properly.
He's a very funny guy, Gerard.
He's a good guy. John Allen, Luet Muller. Luet Muller was the Springbok tight head in the test match in 92. And funnily enough, I was chatting to Jannie Breert, who played in that game. And Jannie Breert said, in fact, it was at the Wanderers Golf Club. And one of the guys said, who played tight head in that test against the All Blacks in 92? And Jannie Breert wasn't certain. I said it was Luet Muller. And Jannie Breert started to argue with me. I said, listen, Jannie, I mean, I actually did that game, and I can promise you it was Luet Muller. Val Bartman, captain. Steve Atherton, Rudy Visagie, Andrew Blakeway. Do you remember Andrew Blakeway? He was at 110%. And Gary the Taish. Gary the Taish.
Andrew played in Plum's days. I mean, that's where he started with the Sharks.
In Plum's days?
When Plum was also playing with, I remember Plum, Andrew Blakeway, and
Gary.
And
Wasn't
I
it
don't think
Gary?
Gary. I think Gary didn't play while Plum was playing.
Andrew Aitken?
No, also I might have for the tail end of it.
Yeah.
I'm
in
sure. I always remember
1990.
Blakeway and Plumtree.
Oh, do you? Yeah. I don't think Plum... But I was looking up, this morning. It's fascinating to sometimes go through these old books. 1989. Northern Transvaal played against Free State. Now, I mean, I was doing comments. Some of the guys, I didn't even bother to write down their Christian names. You see that? Chick Henderson would have probably been... There was Trevor Quirk, Kim Shippey, and Chick Henderson. In fact, Chick came over to TV a little bit later. But here, it was the Northern Transvaal under-20 team against Free State. Lawless, playing for Gavin Lawless, playing Jannie Klaasen. Johnny Roo was the captain at scrum half. And then guys like Donnie Rousseau, Johan Ackerman, Philip Skutter, Khuli Gous, I think it's Khuli. But quite interesting that quite a few of those guys came through and played provincial rugby against Free State. Listen to this. Heinz Fluchler, Brendan Venter, Peter Muller, Louis Boyer.
Gee.
Now, Nick Boyer was a Free State, the old man, was a Free State fly half just before I played provincial rugby, and in fact did some commentary with us later. And then, listen, loose head prop, Albert van der Linde, talks.
For who?
For Free State.
Oh, okay.
Free State under-20s. Reino Opperman, Ruben Creer. Quite a few of these players went through to play provincial rugby. And Northern Transvaal under-20s won 21-9 against that Free State side, which included Brendan Venter and Peter Muller, who both became Springbok centres. Albert van der Linde. Tok Charmeret was also in that side. And the late Ruben Creer. I might have told you the Ruben Creer's daughter, I know, Zoe, is about number 3 in her age group at tennis in the world. Those of you who hadn't heard that before, Zoe Creer. Try and remember the name. Maybe she will come through. The All Black side, Gary, you must be looking. That's bringing back memories. And there was some Twitters there. The guys are having a bit of conversation and saying there was a rort. There was one hell of a rort in that game. And Ian Jones, who was the lock for the All Blacks, they had some great players. Michael Jones. Remember Michael Jones, one of the greatest All Blacks ever.
Cowboy.
Eh?
No, that was
Shaw.
Yeah.
Michael Jones was a guy who wouldn't play on Sundays because of religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was probably the best flank in the world in his heyday.
Didn't he have the record of having scored the first try in World Cup rugby or something?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Very good memory. Good man.
Some stats.
Zunzan Brook and Tuigamala. Do you remember? And, Sir John Kerwin. Sir
That one
John
doesn't sound
Kerwin,
right.
Who doesn't sound right, does
No.
it? Who's Frank Bunce, Grant Fox, Anne Strawn, Richard Lowe. Richard Lowe was the guy that Johan
Filthy.
LaRue bit.
But he was also he wasn't
No,
exactly an
he
angel.
bit Fitzpatrick, and he also played in that game.
Richard
But
Lowe probably
Richard
started
Lowe
that fight.
started that rort, that fight. And Friekberger was the referee. Ian Jones, who I've spent quite a bit of time with, Carmo to Cape Town. And I joined them they did he was doing a whole lot of interviews, and I joined them in Port Elizabeth and drove down the Garden Route with the mob. And we stayed in Bram van Straten's B&B just outside George. Fabulous B&B. Had about 6 rooms, and they were all named after stadiums around the world. I think where he had played Test rugby. It was a really fantastic B&B. And Ian Jones told the story about after that rort that the referee Friekberger called a scrum, and Sean Fitzpatrick said, "Whose ball is it, sir?" And he said, "Ours." I think he was bullshitting, actually. Should we were going to play in, if you didn't hear it or didn't see it, Darren interviewed Francois Pienaar. And Darren, are you ready to go on that?
I am. I'm actually just trying to go back to Andrew Blakeway's years and find some more information about that team. But I can do that while you listen. So this is when, just to give you some context, this is we spoke to Francois after some other event or function that he was doing, the Rugby Museum. And it was supposed to be a quick chat with him about the museum. It turned out to be quite an intense discussion about the structure of South African rugby and which way it should go.
I'd be very interested to hear it.
Particularly, obviously, he was very much in the forefront of that whole turning professional era and what went on around after '95 World Cup.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised to find out that kind of his thoughts are very much in line with, I think, the way I certainly think it should go.
Yeah.
And I think it would be very interesting to get your thoughts on what we discuss here, particularly towards the latter half of this interview. So
Great.
we got the full one, so sit
Look
back,
forward to
relax, listen with
Fabulous.
interest for the next 10 minutes.
Great.
This was Francois talking to us on Ballz about a month ago.
Captain, our captain.
Hello,
It's Darren and Simon at Ballz Radio. How are you doing?
Darren, John, and Simon. Greetings from sunny Cape Town.
Hey.
Greetings,
Lovely
Francois.
Is it sunny Cape Town? Is it like a day there today?
It's a super day. The weekend was different, though, but today is fine.
Enjoy it while it lasts, Francois, because I think that winter's on its way very soon when the rain comes. And
Darren, when you've lived in London for 7 years, this is bliss.
yeah, okay, that puts it in perspective. Right, so now I'm sitting here looking at 100 minutes, 8 varsity athletics happening this month. I see it's going to be live on SuperSport, and your friends from FNB involved again. Varsity Sports presenting Explosive Mondays. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we're very excited. We launched it yesterday in Joburg, and we've been working on this for 3 years. Basically, we've been talking to the universities about forming a company to house all their sports properties and the commercial rights. And it's taken quite a while, but the universities, the leading universities in South Africa, 11 of them, have formed a company, and they put all the sporting codes into this company, the commercial rights. And I'm talking about all sports, including talent competitions and gladiators concept. And we signed a 10-year agreement to commercialize sport with the universities. And we launched yesterday the next 6, which is athletics, which kicks off on the 15th of April at Stellenbosch, Kutsenberg, and then the following weekend it will be in Joburg. And then on the 29th, Monday the 29th, it's at the University of Pretoria, when we will crown the best athletics university in the country. It's again on Monday nights. It follows on Varsity Cup. We started Varsity Cup about 5 years ago, and it's growing very nicely. So this is just following on from what we started with rugby.
All right, so that was going to be my next question. Was this basically prodded and accelerated by the success? Because you cannot deny it's been an unqualified success, the Varsity Cup, as far as just a concept and just the way the whole thing's gone and grown. So was that sort of the thing that accelerated you now to expanding it into all other sports?
Yes, Darren, when we started Varsity Cup 5 years ago, it was against all the odds. When I said we're going to do this, nobody believed that it would work. 5 years later, it's thank you for the compliment. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
But it comes from America. I've been to the States a lot, and I call it stealing with pride. I'm a big fan of college sport in America. So the structures we've put in place with the universities is very much based on that system. Yeah. That's why it's taken so long. It's taken 3 years to sign this deal. You can imagine, there's a lot of things and scenarios we had to sketch, and how do we actually approach this. We did that, and now we've landed 3 sponsors. First National Bank, they're in, and Famous Brands. Very happy to have them in, and they're using their strong brands with different sports. So Wimpy will be focusing on athletics. Mug and Bean will be in hockey, which follows also in April and May. Domino's will be in football. Wimpy will come back in netball, and then we'll have sevens and women's beach volleyball where steers play a role. And the other sponsor that's come on board is Cell C, very aggressive in the marketplace. Wonderful sponsor to have. We're still looking for 2 more. But we've pushed the button on this year. So this year, following on, the Varsity Cup final is next Monday, as you know.
Yep.
The following Monday, the 15th, will be Varsity Athletics in Stellenbosch.
Fantastic. And once again, my next question was going to be how proud you must be that South Africa, has responded to varsity sports, and obviously we talk on the basis of rugby, as well as America has responded to college sports there. And theirs has been going for a lot longer in a more formalized manner, like as you guys are doing now. And South Africans have latched on so quickly because college sports, for those that don't know, is just massive over there. It's almost as big as their professional sports.
It's actually, in many terms, it's almost bigger.
Yeah.
Look at that Rose Bowl.
Yesterday at the launch, I used an example there, and I traveled to the States a lot. So I'm a fan of how they run their sports, and the University of Nebraska is in a town, Lincoln. Now, Lincoln is as big as Bloemfontein. The University of Nebraska has got about 23,000 students, so smaller than the University of Stellenbosch. They have some illustrious people that have come through the university. One of the most famous and richest people in the world, Warren Buffett, studied there.
Okay.
They have a stadium, an 85,000-seater stadium that's been sold out since 1962 for all their matches.
Wow.
And if you just consider, it's a Bloemfontein, it's a smallish university, but they've managed to attract a vast audience, and the average age is a little bit younger than I am. It's about 40. So it's not only about students, it's about the whole experience. It's about the power of the brand and the affinity of that community for that brand. They call themselves the Cornhuskers.
Yeah. And
it's incredible. You should go and Google this. When you see it's the power of red. When they put on an event, it's sportainment.
Yeah.
So if you look at varsity rugby, it's about sportainment. It's music, it's fun, it's vibey. and it's about rugby that rocks. Now, varsity athletics is going to be explosive Mondays. We've got wonderful athletes in this country. We've got wonderful netball players, hockey players, and I can go on and on and on. To give them the opportunity to compete for the university. So it's bigger than the individual, but it's also for the individual. That's the concept. But the most important thing is that they must study. There's life after sport. And oftentimes we forget that. There's so many talented athletes, sports people, sportswomen, that just focus on sport. And then when sport stops, they are not qualified or equipped for life after sport. So for me, the important thing is they've got to develop their brain and they've got to develop their body.
Yeah. And I've been fortunate enough to have lived in the States and still got out as well afterwards. But having seen and been exposed to the big colleges, all the bowl games, and just the way they give it exposure in the newspapers, the USA Today and stuff. And I was just thinking, I wish you could actually then, your next step after you've done all the varsity things is go to the professional sports and try and adopt in our rugby the same model that they've got in their baseball, with their major leagues and then the AAA, AA, and A leagues, where you have all these feeder teams in different parts of America, all wearing the brands of the pro teams and moving players up and down. I just think that system and the draft system here is what we need in our pro sports.
100%. You and I, we've got a meeting of minds. If you go back when rugby turned professional, and we were sort of central in that, everybody sort of tried to adopt the franchise system. And by doing that, we took a couple of steps backwards. If I use the Lions, who I played for, I had the privilege to play for the Lions, what they did is they took the Lions and the Cheetahs and they formed a franchise called the Cats. And what they did with this franchise, they actually disenfranchised the spectators. Yeah. Because the staunch Lion supporters just couldn't understand this, and the Cheetah supporters similar. How do I get an affinity for this brand? Plus, the players became prostitutes. You play then in Joburg, then in Kimberley, then you play in Bloemfontein. So what happened initially when the game turned professional, I think we approached it from the wrong angle. Varsity sports should be a trampoline for talent. And if I use Varsity Cup Rugby as an example, yes, I used one or two. There are many examples, but Raymond Roulet, this fantastic winger that's playing for the Cheetahs. Last year he played Varsity Cup. A couple of months later he played Cheetahs, and then he went on tour with the Springboks. He's not allowed to play Varsity Cup anymore because he's been on the trampoline, he's jumped high enough, he's got exposure, and now somebody else should start jumping on the trampoline. And that's what varsity sports must be. It must be a trampoline for talent, and when an individual jumps very high and they become professional, then somebody else should get an opportunity, and we shouldn't block the opportunities for the youngsters coming through. Because they've gone through their growth spurts. They were like I was a center that became too slow, and then I played on the flank, and even I became slower playing on the flank. I always say the difference between my jogging pace and my sprinting pace was a facial expression. But now that they go to university, now you know what their positions are, you know what their strengths and their weaknesses are. Now for the next 3 years, really develop them into the ultimate athletes. But they have to study. And in 3 years' time, you can just imagine what you'll be able to do. Then they go into the draft system. You can't. There's not enough space for 200 athletes that come into the system year on year compounded. Can you imagine how strong we'll be in rugby? Can you imagine how strong we'll be in athletics and hockey and netball and football and through the ranks?
Well, I certainly hope that, as you say, you're focusing on this, but that's part of a sort of bigger process where maybe we might get to that point, Francois. Time has marched on, so we've got to move on, but it's a really, really great concept. We appreciate your time chatting to us about it today, and we look forward to chatting more about it as it develops. Please, if we can, when you start launching some of the others and also talk about where we could possibly go with this stuff. It really is exciting. So well done to you and your team and everyone involved. And thanks for your time this afternoon. Nice to catch up with you again.
Baie dankie en 'n lekker middag vir julle.
Dankie Francois. Asseblief. Baie dankie.
Bye.
Cheers, Francois. Bye-bye.
Tata.
Francois Pino.
That was a month ago.
Isn't that interesting? And he's so enthusiastic about varsity sport and the varsity cup and how it's taken off. Darren, I think one of the problems in South African rugby, and maybe the problems in most sports in South Africa, is that we are very provincialistic.
That's the problem. It always has been.
But if you go back in history, when rugby, let's face it, as we knew it, rugby, I mean, they used to smuggle me into the townships to go and coach. I would lie down in the back of the car and go and coach on a Sunday morning.
Same way I used to get into the drive-in.
No, well, I only went to the drive-in with my girlfriend. Funnily enough, I was at the drive-in the night President Kennedy got shot.
So that was you counted out as a suspect.
So funny how you remember these ridiculous things. But we were so provincialistic, and what happened was we became isolated, and so the huge event of the year was the Currie Cup final. You remember those Currie Cup finals and the hatred between the North and the South. And I had people sort of, getting all worked up and saying, the province people, I can't stand the Blue Bulls, and Blue Bulls people are nasty and terrible, and vice versa. And I think that we still haven't really shaken that off.
But can I just based on what he was saying there, as I say, I was very pleasantly surprised, because I remember we actually dedicated an entire Boots and All almost one evening when we were going through one of our lulls, and it came back to what is the problem here. Club rugby's a mess. We were battling provincially, and the Springboks weren't looking all that great. And there was a full show, I remember, I think it was in Nick Mallett's days, about this particular thing. We got onto this particular subject, and the bottom line always came down to the fact that if you were like the Falker or, as you mentioned, Northern Free State, these guys have as much power as the Sharks or the Bulls. Okay, and now these were brands that were going global and worldwide and were very strong, and that was completely wrong. But there were reasons why they were so protective, because whenever they voted, they used to vote to protect themselves. No one's going to, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. Same kind of concept.
Yeah,
and we got into the thing about, if you just take the American system and adapt it to our rugby, and how would that work? And just as an example, it would be if you take the Bulls, and the Pumas are part of the Bulls franchise, right? At the moment,
well,
loosely,
very loosely, because at one stage they were part of the Lions.
Yeah.
Primarily because of a financial situation where Dr. Louis Late said, "I will lend you money," and they sort of became a feeder.
Yeah.
But it was a very loose type of arrangement.
Yeah. Well, in the example that I use is in America. I was a big St. Louis Cardinals baseball fan. They're the major league side.
Yeah.
But all around America are dotted these other teams that are also called the Cardinals. They wear the same branding. They belong to the franchise, so they sell the same kit. So basically, if you lived in a little town somewhere in New Orleans or in Mississippi or Louisiana, wherever you might be, they would play in what is the A League. Then they have double A, and triple A is under major leagues.
Right.
And what would happen is St. Louis and any team in these satellite leagues that were part of their franchise would wear their branding, carry their kit, and belong to the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
And I clearly remember when I was living there in '92, there was a St. Louis Cardinals player who'd been injured, but he came back via the double A League. So in some little town in, I think it was Macon or wherever in Georgia, where the Macon Cardinals played, just as an example.
Yeah.
He played a couple of games for them as his comeback game. They packed out that stadium. Then he went up and played one or two in the triple A's, and when he was fit enough, then they brought him back into the franchise for a major league thing. So you could have an example of, like, for the Pumas, if they would now change their name, not the Mpumalanga Pumas, but the Mpumalanga Bulls, wearing the Bulls branding.
Yeah.
You could end up with Pierre Spies coming back from injury, or someone losing form, going down to them, getting sent down to them, and one of theirs getting promoted up to the Bulls.
Yeah.
And do you imagine that the Pumas having 5 Bulls Springboks playing for them in some given scenario?
Sure.
How much more interest there'd be as well with the union. And it's not selling out or anything. It's they become part of the Bulls.
Yeah.
And that is basically how the American system works.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about here. And then you have your draft, where by the time you get these players coming out of varsity, you should include the clubs in that process.
Just tell me, how does the draft system work in terms of do they rate the players? Or
They do. So you've heard of the Heisman Trophy.
The lowest team gets first choice.
Correct. The Heisman Trophy is basically what all your college players play for.
Right.
So the best player ends up wins Heisman Trophy and generally is the number one pick. And the team that finished worst the previous year gets number one pick, but they trade. So the number one pick might be a quarterback.
Yes.
But that team that doesn't necessarily need a quarterback.
Yeah.
They might need something else, a tight end or whatever. So what they'll do is they'll trade their pick or they'd pass on their pick but trade for two others later on, number 5 or 6.
Okay.
And that's how the draft works. But by the time all of these guys get into the draft, they're household names. So, for instance, Jan Serfontein.
Yes, they've been playing college football.
Yeah. Whereas our household names are guys that have come straight out of school and get snapped up by unions. So you've missed out that whole section of club rugby and varsity rugby. Yeah. And the rest of them, where do they go? What's happened to them? What do? Do they go and join clubs? No.
No. Well, you see, this is the great problem. And the other thing is that, funnily enough, I'm going to look it up, and I know it gets a bit tiresome referring to these books all the time. But I can remember playing against Diggers when Diggers had seven Springboks in their side. And we played at Ellis Park. There were like 14,000 people there. No, we get 80,000 people at a college football match.
Yeah.
But your populations, I think, are different, and cultures are a little bit different. But they've taken the star players out of club rugby.
Yeah.
And the Varsity Cup has replaced that in a way. And it is giving a guy who didn't make Craven weak. I said one of the great tragedies is that Jan Serfontein, barring injury, may never play a club rugby match in his life.
Yeah.
And so you're losing a whole cultural aspect of what club rugby can do for you, and what the 4th and 5th and 6th team mean. And all meeting in the pub on Saturday after the first team game and having a sing-song and that sort of stuff. Okay, the modern youth may not want to do that, but that when you talk to the guys who play for Pirates and for Wanderers and the younger guys, that's part of their lives.
Their lives, yeah. But to compare that to how many years are we talking now? 30 years or so, more than 30 years ago. Colin Beck never played a provincial game and got into the Springbok squad. He never played a game for province. Didn't Craven take him straight out of club rugby with Marties and put him into the box squad?
Yeah. But that's what Craven used to do. So.
What Craven wanted, Craven got.
Yeah. I'm just going to go back to our tweets. Twitters. I don't know.
Tweets. No, you got it right.
Simon goes dilly about the fact that I can't get it right. Gary Blate. Great supporter, thanks Gary, and obviously you dilly about it. Andrew Blakeway was a great player, tireless. Wayne Fivey, Dieter Creasley, I remember Dieter Creasley, and Ben Liebenberg. I don't remember Ben.
I don't remember him either.
Were Lucy's in his day, but he was probably more of a club rugby player. And then Peter Bodkin, quite right, Peter, you're quite right. Michael Jones was known as the Iceman. And, of course, who would forget Zinni's drop in the Rugby World Cup semi-final? I got to know Zinni a little bit at the 2007 World Cup because he was employed by Supersport to come on a panel show with Jeremy Guscott and and Kobus Visa. He's my mate. Kobus, he's a good guy to tour with. Nobody messes with you.
Yeah, your own security right there.
Yeah, built-in security guard.
Well, we used to have a cameraman called Bull that was also doubled up in that role.
Yeah.
Remember Bull?
Yeah, I do.
Biggest cameraman I've ever seen in my life, and he used to just go after games. He used to just hover around all of us and just keep an eye.
And then I love this one. Blakeway's nickname in the team was Polyfiller. Sharks World. Oh, we've got a lot of Sharks people. I don't like when I hear these sort of little rumours that all's not well in the Sharks camp. And if those, I was just actually thinking this morning, if those rumours are right, and there's sort of like a few words about Plumtree and Kankowski and the boys, and John Smith's going to walk into a snake pit.
Yeah, I think, but look, it might well be a as a result of what might be a partial clean out.
Oh.
Because John has said, and I mean, when he got the job, he said he's now got to take the Sharks from where they've got to a level from 95 to now. They've built a brand, but it's almost like they've kind of been resting on that brand's laurels now.
Yeah.
It's time to take it to the next level. And obviously there are going to be casualties, to suit his management style. A lot of people are saying, will John be one of those casualties? I have my doubts, eh?
You mean John Plumtree?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hasn't he just signed another contract?
Yeah, I have my
think
doubts.
he may, yeah.
And
People are very quick to jump on the coach and say it's the coach's fault. And the whole thing is not the coach's fault if a guy drops the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Which has been their story the whole season. I mean, they have not looked good at all, except for the Rebels game.
Yeah.
The interesting one as well, and people can go listen back to that interview when we eventually spoke to Ryan Kankowski after that whole, there were also those rumors of a rift between him and then John left him behind. And John was quite straightforward with us when he said, listen, we asked him, he said, is everything cool with you and Ryan? And he says, well, no, it's not cool for Ryan. But basically saying he's not playing up to scratch, so we've left him behind.
Yeah.
And when we spoke to Ryan, there was all these rumors about him and John have had a fallout, blah, blah, and Ryan said, no. It's that we had an argument like two adults, like two mates, people that know each other for a long time.
I wasn't in the team, so
yeah,
to speak.
and we had it might have got a bit heated, but it was very mature, and they both accepted and still respect each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it was, and that's the kind of guy Plum is.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him he's not the kind of guy to have agendas against anyone. He'd tell you straight out, I don't like you, or I don't see your place in the side, go.
Sure.
So.
One of the interesting things when you go on a Springbok tour, and I've been on 17 Springbok tours, and only. When they announce this, you've now got 30, let's say a minimum of 30 players on touring teams now. They used to have 30 players, 2 guys in each position, and they now take 32, 33. When they announce the test team, the guys who are left out of the test team, quite a few of them are bloomin' upset.
Yeah.
They think they should be in the test team. The other thing is that you get about 100 grand a test. So those guys don't get that money if they're not in the test 22. So they're not that happy about it and that type of thing. So you get unhappy players on a tour. It's a very difficult situation. The manager and the coach have to be like, I don't know what they treat them with
they're
kid
like mom as well. Yeah, they've got to be like mom or dad. They've got to
very
handle them
difficult.
carefully.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you and smiling because, and you would know as well. And this has been one of the joys of having worked at SuperSport on game days when they're announcing the Springbok squad. But you remember they used to announce it after a semi-final of Super Rugby or Currie Cup.
Yeah.
And of course we would get the teams early so that they would put the pictures up. And I'm looking at you, Blades, and you and I know stuff in selections. I don't know. I mean, do you? Where there have been players that were in the team in the morning, and then by half time of a game, that semi-final, their names being crossed out.
Oh well, it has happened. Yes,
yeah.
No, it has.
One guy it happened to twice.
I mean, I was a Transvaal selector for years. In fact, at one stage, I was convener of the Transvaal selection committee. And when I first became a Transvaal selector, there were about 7 selectors, which was far too cumbersome. And in fact, the day Kitch Christie came in as coach, Louis Late said, I want you as my coach. And Christie said, one proviso, I don't have a selection committee.
Yeah.
And I mean, I walked into the change room and I was convener of the selectors. Kitch Christie was there. I said, what's this oak doing here? I mean, I knew Kitch. I mean, it wasn't sort of like, I'm annoyed that he's here. What's Kitch doing here? I said, he's the new coach and we haven't got a selection committee anymore.
He's picking the team.
Which, I didn't have a problem.
Well, him and
I didn't
Doc
have
Late.
a problem with him and Doc Late.
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with that. And but my point was that one of the selectors said to me, you vote for my guy and I'll vote for your guy. Well, I mean, it was sort of like ridiculous. I said, what are you talking about? We had to pick the best guys. And And, you know, the Springbok selection committee used to be 7 strong. And I always thought the trials, you know, they had these trials and people were calling for trials and that sort of thing. And I used to think of my own self being very much a pattern player in terms of I had guys around me like Peter Cronier and Peter Swanson, and who I say to my great credit became Springboks playing outside me. You know, and I always sort of think I'm quite proud of that, and I genuinely am quite proud of the fact that those two particularly, who with the centre partnership outside me, became Springboks. But in trials, you'd have the convener selectors, an old Stellenbosch guy living in Stellenbosch, so he would see the Stellenbosch guys play week in and week out. And you might have a guy who's a very talented player who goes down and has a trial and has one of those days where he can't do anything right. You know, so in that area, it's a little bit unfair. But then you look at the influence of coaches. Look at how many Griquas guys became Springboks when Andre Markgraaff was the coach. And look how many of the Sharks when Ian Mack was the coach. And likewise, the Lions when Kitch was the coach. You know, so it works. You got to be in the right place at the right time.
But it's amazing in this day of technology as well. I mean, there's so many people that could be sounding boards for a coach, because in the end, the coach lives or dies by his team that he puts out there. He's the guy that gets the axe if it doesn't work out, not the selection committee.
Sure.
They stay.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm in full agreement that whoever's the coach, he picks the team, in conjunction with the captain, obviously. But there are so many people like Ian Mack at the selector for the Springboks. Instead of being a selector, be a sounding board. So you know the coach knows he's got Mack's ear, and he can phone and say, "What do you think of this player?" If he's got a bit of a question mark or is a toss-up between two players, then start calling on those guys to go, "What do you think in terms of who we're playing?" You know, these guys know what they're talking about. So to have access to those guys, and it always amazed me how. When we'd sit in studio, or you'd be sitting commentating on a game, you'd sit there and Nas would sort of be picking up on what a kicker's doing wrong, you know, whether it's his touch kicks or his whatever he's doing, or his goal kicks. And that a coach would never pick up the phone or, you know,
and ask Nas
and say, "Listen, can you see anything here?" And haul in all your resources. And the classic one struck me actually the other day. I was watching that Sevens game against England. The one we lost when they scored just before half time. And we were kind of all over them in the first half. But the nice thing about the Sevens is that on TV, you see they take the camera straight into the huddle where the coaches are talking to the team. And the guy was basically saying, "Let's get into the double. Let's double ruck these guys. Let's double ruck these guys. That's what we need to do. They're all over us in the rucks. Let's get into the double ruck." You want to almost get your phone and go, "Paul, this is what they're doing in the second half, so you can change it around." And I'm surprised no one's actually even taken that on board. It's to say, "Listen, you be our eyes. If you pick up anything, let me know." You know, because in this day and age, you can.
You know what was interesting is that Sid said to me, because Lofi Yolof, when Lofi Yolof was the coach of the Transvaal under-20 side, he would invite us trustees of the Transvaal Old Boys, which was Corey Papers, Kevin de Klerk, Sid and myself, and he would invite us to the Transvaal under-20 trials and sit us down with clipboards in the stands, and we would have to tick the guys that we just anybody who caught the eye and sort of tick and that type of thing, and Lofi would include us. And he quite often would phone me and say, "Well, you're going to Craven Week, look out for a flank or look out for a number 8 and that type of thing." And I was looking through again this 1992 book of mine, and Sid used to crib from me.
Didn't get the homework done.
Yeah, he would sort of, and I'd sort of playfully cover my clipboard, you know. But he always said that I picked out Heinrich Fools. And I saw Yapi Mulder play in a RAU under-19 game and said to Harry Verleun, "This guy's got a jaw, but listen to these names. This is now a club game, RAU against Old Graves at the Toyota Club Championships. Theo van Rensburg.
Wow.
Heinrich Fools. Chris Dirks. Henny Leroux. Johan Leroux. Francois Pienaar. 6 Springboks in that side.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, they're just that you're not getting that. You get a crowd of 25, 30,000 at those club championships. Look at the crowds you get in a varsity cup now. I know some of them are rent a crowd, you know, because they say to the Corsairs kids, "You've got to go." But I mean, it's such a fabulous system. And you know what's happening, of course, in you're getting these all-powerful provinces, and I've been accused of being a Bulls supporter. No, on SMS's.
Ja.
Jy klink net soos 'n blou Bull supporter, ondersteuner, you know. And I say, well, what game is that? You know, well, the game when the Bulls scored 49 points against the Hurricanes. Do me a favour. You know, obviously you're talking Bulls, because they're killing the opposition. And but what has happened, of course, is the Bulls go and they sign up 7 centres to the detriment of other provinces. You know, now they've got this young Swanepoel boy who's playing. I mean, they've given him a couple of Vodacom Cup games, but he was with Jan Saffontein at Grey the year before last. Now, Dries Swanepoel, I think, has had about 4 games for the Bulls. They're not getting game time.
Well, is Pollard, is he injured, or what's the story with
Pollard? No, he's not injured. He played for the Vodacom Cup side against Eastern Province Kings. Funnily enough, the Bulls were leading by 31 points to 7 or something with 15 minutes to go and lost the game to a very controversial TMO decision. And there was a controversial two controversial TMO decisions on Saturday. What I said to the guys, I said even to some of the administrators on at the Vodacom Cup final, I said it's amazing. And in fact, I said to Mark Alexander and James Stoffberg, the deputy president and the vice president of South African Rugby, I said, SANZAAR spend all this money on going on flying referees all over the world to try and have neutral referees, and the TMO is a local loc.
Yeah.
You know, and the TMO has been brought in more and more and more and more into making vital decisions, and they use a local guy. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I think their argument is that the camera doesn't lie. So once it's going out there and everybody's seeing it, the chances of a TMO being biased is only going to be to his detriment. But as we've seen, they've cocked up a lot of
2 occasions. Robbie Kempson, who coaches the EP Kings, I'm not going to name the TMO, made a mistake in the favour of the EP Kings. I was doing the game with Bob Skinstad, and when the TMO said to the referee, "You may award that try," Bob and I looked at each other aghast. You know, and the Bulls lost the game. And Robbie Kempson, I said to him, because he did the game with us at the Vodacom Cup final, I said to Robbie, "What did you think of that decision?" He said, "Well, it went our way, and it was the wrong way."
The shocker.
Yeah. And, of course, there was the penalty try last weekend. I mean, still, I believe the tweets and the SMSs were flying around the place with that penalty try.
Well, a lot of it comes into also how the questions asked and what they're looking for. But, and again, sometimes you'll get us, because I think I was watching, I think it was Tank Lanning, trying to explain the reason why they decided on what they decided, because the call was made or the question was
that
asked.
On Rugby 365?
No, on Front Row Grunt, on Tank's side. And he was kind of going, well, the reason why is because, blah. So technically, I think what the refs are saying is that they were justified in that, because that was the question. But the argument is that if the question's asked, is that a try or not? And in the replay of that, you see a blatant knock-on, but it's because the question wasn't asked about that. The guys ignore it and say, well, we got to leave it to the ref on the field. That's where it makes a mockery of the whole thing, because you're getting officials having another look, seeing a blatant breaking of the laws, and you're allowing the try to happen, saying, well, it's okay because the ref never asked me about that. That is where they shoot themselves in the foot.
Well, I think also, but the referees are now saying, you know, I think it's a try, but we're going back a phase, or they can only go back 2 phases. Now, quite interestingly enough, with Akona and Ngangi's try on Saturday evening, there was, you know, J.J. Engelbrecht had the ball. Joel was convinced that the ball had been dislodged by the force of the guy's tackle and that the guy hadn't touched the ball. Okay? Just prior to that, I think it could have been, and I haven't seen it again, the Chile boy slapped the ball forward. So, they went back to that situation, but the TMO made the decision that the ball had not gone forward.
Yeah.
The players saw it on the big screen. The players walked back as if a scrum was going to be awarded, and the TMO said, you may award the try. Now, it's things like that I think are creating a little bit of a problem.
Yeah.
And I think it is times that they think about flying. I mean, Mark Alexander told me that they fly the timekeepers around the world. I mean, and not the TMOs. It makes a crazy sense of it.
All right, should we take a tune and then wrap it up after that?
No problem.
There's some tweets coming through as well. The Twitter address is at Ballz Radio, Ballz with a Z. If you've got any other final tweets for Blades, send a tweet through. See, there's one from Wesley Tecklenburg.
Yes, good.
We'll get to that one in just a moment after
fabulous.
Don McLean.
He was singing, bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. Them good old boys were drinking whiskey and rye, singing, this'll be the day that I die.
This will be the day that I died. American Pie by Don McLean.
Yeah.
Don McLean. I remember going to a fabulous restaurant, the old Hillbrow days. Hey?
Yeah.
The Montmartre.
The Montmartre.
Montmartre. And there was a guitarist there by the name of Rob Aikenhead Jr. He used to sing that Bye Bye Miss American Pie, just like Don McLean.
Well, I think all of
Rob Aikenhead Jr.
I think all of it was so. Did you ever go to the dog box?
No.
In Hillbrow?
Only at home.
Yeah, no. Well, normally when you came back from the dog box, you were in the dog box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't. But I remember, the charcoal oven and we used to stay in hotels in Hillbrow when I was playing for the Transvaal side.
Which one? The Chelsea?
No, not the Chelsea. Well, Chelsea was where didn't they have Jacques Brel there?
Yeah,
there was a little theatre there.
Yeah.
Jacques Brel.
Just down the road from High Point, or up the road from High Point, which is the big sort of.
There was I forget the name of the hotel. If Sid were here, he'd remember. But mind you, now I want to pick up on Peter
Wesley.
G. You were a little bit late, but you got it right. Donnie Gerber scored the first 5-point try for South Africa. And then Wesley Tecklenburg. Hey, Blades, what did you think about Young Men and the Lions Friday night? Watch Little Brother Warwick. Little Brother Warwick, I reckon if they had a man of the match, probably would have been the man of the match. Joel was very impressed with him, as was I. And then Peter Bodkin saying, easy, was that a try or not? I agree with you, Peter. The referee's got to say, was that a try or not? And go back those two phases and go through it. And then I sometimes sort of think, for the old days when, the referee made a decision. If you didn't like the decision, you might chirp the referee a bit and get on with it. I can remember the late Eddie Hofmeyr, it was. I think it was Eddie Hofmeyr blew a game that we played against Northerns in 1969. And against all odds, we won the game. And he awarded us a try that quite blatantly wasn't a try. I can remember it wasn't Eddie Hofmeyr. We'll think of it. Anyway, the referee, Alan Mentor, was playing for Northern Transvaal that day. And I'd kept him out of the Transvaal side. And the bugger, went on the Springbok tour.
Yeah.
And that aside, I remember Custer Brain awarded the try, and I remember Alan Mentor looking up at the referee like this, and I looked at Alan and I just smiled and shook my head because it had been a knock on. But he gave us a try. The good old days of non-neutral referees.
I wonder when if there ever be the day when a player goes over, will stand up himself and say, no, sorry, I knocked it on, or if the ref gives it a go.
But occasionally you do see a player, amongst his own players, he'll sort of go like this, no, it wasn't a try. Talking Reds, don't you think we need to adopt NFL type? Rian van Jaarsveld. I think that's not a bad idea. They did try. I think they experimented with Stellenbosch University with a referee on either half of the field. I think the referees in American football, they have a specific job, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Well, they look for different aspects of the game, and then one of them flags it.
Yes.
And the thing about football in the, although they did have a bit of a problem now when they had their referee strike, or their referee strike, and they had to bring in a whole lot of these other guys that weren't quite up to scratch. There was a lot of controversy about it. Yeah.
Oh, really?
So I think they've got the guys back again. It was about pay and what they were getting. But the thing about that is, it's amazing if you watch an American football game, an NFL game, that very rarely do you just get one flag on the play. Normally you'll see one flag and immediately with it comes another two.
Yeah.
So generally it's always a consensus amongst the refs that are picking up something that it's getting flagged on the play.
Yeah.
And
then they have one guy who's the major.
He's the main
Yeah,
umpire or referee, and he makes
yeah.
the call and does the actual call on the field. But I like what Rian says on every line with 3 referrals.
Yeah.
3's a bit much, but I like the idea of maybe 1 or even 2 referrals per. Leave it up to the team, the captain.
Yeah.
Because like in cricket and in tennis, now you've got the choice. If you think there was something that wasn't right, you can call it, have it referred, and if you're correct, it'll
go
stay.
against you.
The problem is then SuperSport and your Skies and your Foxes are going to have to agree to make a game 2 hours. Because it's going to take that long.
Yes.
Do you remember, every time you have a successful referral, you keep that referral. You'll get more accurate outcomes, though.
Yeah, but you will. Is it a little bit boring?
But every time there's a TMO, it's so exciting. People can't wait to see either their team being proved right
or wrong,
whether it was or not.
Yeah.
In the end, in sport, whether it's cricket, rugby, soccer, do you not want to get the correct outcome?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I think we're done for the
that
day.
it?
Sash and Daisy are champion at the bit, and they're sitting here, and I've got to get out of here. Thanks for being with me today.
No, pleasure.
It was a
to work with
real
you again,
pleasure
Blaze.
to have you along, and thanks for your Twitters, guys and girls. Till next week.
Absolutely
Cheers.
brilliant.
Cheers.
Cheers, Blades. All right, Sasha Daisy on the way. She's furiously looking at her phone to see if Lewis Hamilton has replied to her tweet. Can I interview you on Daisy's double D's? Yeah.
That was the Blades on Ball show. Join the voice of South African rugby on your wireless next Monday for more unbelievable memories and banter. Until then, stay classy, like 20-year-old Glenn Morangi classy.